We welcome back Lable Braun, an author and thinker from the Albert Hazen Smith Philosopher Circle. His background is, well, quite diverse, including decades as a corporate executive. He is a mystic and a Phi Beta Kappa scholar. He reads tarot cards and is a certified project management professional. Above all, in each of these roles, his essence is that of a storyteller.
You are watching Profundo TV with host Phyllis Haynes.
Lable, I am so glad to get to talk to you again. It has been a while since we've had an exchange, so I'm just thrilled to see you.
And as you know, it's been a journey to get back here, and I so appreciate all your love and support during this journey. So thank you. So I'm going to open up with a quote by Alan Watts. This quote has really influenced a lot of my thinking. Alan Watts was a philosopher of religion back in the 60s and 70s and a major force in the 60s counterculture movement. And here's what he had to say about belief. We must here make a clear distinction between belief and faith, because in general practice, belief has come to mean a state of mind which is almost the opposite of faith. Belief, as I use the word here, is the insistence that the truth is what one would lief or wish it to be. The believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits in with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening to the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith lets go. In this sense of the word, faith is the essential virtue of science and likewise of any religion that is not self-deception.
Let's have that last line again. Let's
Sure.
read the last line.
Faith is the essential virtue of science and likewise of any religion that is not self-deception.
So what inspired you? What do you get from this? Because you chose this reading for a reason.
I did. I One of the things that is really on my mind is that as the religions seem to be getting less orthodox and more accepting of each other, in other words, practicing their faith, that in the political and social realm, free exchange has become religified, if I can put it that way, that there is a central orthodoxy which must not be varied from. And this central orthodoxy is based on contending beliefs which really separate people instead of bringing them together. And in my view, I have a theory. I call it the hologram effect. Holograms, we've all seen holograms when we were kids, probably, or if you're as old as me, you saw them when you were kids. But what's interesting about, they give you a 3D image on a 2D surface. And what's really, really interesting about these is that you can break a hologram in half, and the original image will still be in both halves, but at a lower level of resolution. Break it again, and the original image is in all four pieces, but at a much lower level. Keep breaking it and breaking it, and the image is still there, but at lower and lower levels of resolutions. We each are a hologram of the universe, a hologram of the truth. But individually, at a very, very low level of resolution. The more we come together, the more we bring the pieces back together, the greater the resolution comes up. And so I think where we have to go to is to understand that we are like the 10 blind people who are touching a different part of the elephant. One touches the tail and says it's a rope. The other one touches the legs and said, oh, the elephant is like a tree trunk. Another touches these tusks and says, oh, the elephant is like a spear. The other one, the ears, and says, oh, an elephant is a fan. We are largely blind. We don't really accept how blind we are because it's not what we want to believe. But individually, we are at such a low level of resolution that we functionally, we might as well consider ourselves blind. And the truth for the person touching the tail is that the elephant is a rope. He's got proof of it, or she's got proof of it. They're touching a tail. The other one's touching a fan and say, I may be blind, but I know a fan when I feel it. And the thing is, I believe they're all true, but they got to talk to each other to get a real view of the elephant. I hope we can all come together, not in judgment, but in discussion and figure out what the elephant is really like.
Well, I like your view of the world. I like your suggestion. But as we use that example, which many of us have grown up in the Judeo-Christian religion, have been exposed to that idea about the elephant and the different points of view. The problem is that the elephant now is an AI generated exponential machine being run by oligarchs, so that the opportunity to discover the truth is being shaded by forces that didn't exist in the days when it was just a matter of a different perspective at one end or the other. This is the challenge of this tale. Come back at me, it's fine.
It's not that it didn't exist. It may have existed in a different form and with a different name, but there was always people who wanted to shape the truth to, as Alan Watts says about belief, to fit what they really wanted to believe because it's in their self-interest. If we let them, shame on us. They're transparent about it. They're not hiding anything, yet we're buying into it because we don't really want to talk to our neighbor. And that's to me, I fully agree with you about the problem, but the solution is rejecting that. You know what? These oligarchs aren't going to invest 10 cents into AI if nobody wants to use it. And we are allowing ourselves to be pulled into it. The problem with AI is that it projects a sense of certainty. And the human brain loves certainty. And it absolutely hates uncertainty. And so we constantly are fooling ourselves into believing that we're certain about something about which we really aren't certain. And AI reinforces that because we can tell AI what reality we want to see. If we can get out of that corral and start interacting with other people and being willing to be challenged, which is what's so lovely about the conversations we have, to be challenged and to come into it saying, I don't know the answer. Maybe we can discover it together.
Normally I am on the same page with you about this. I have to just share with our audience and the people who follow us. It is so difficult to keep my head above water with all the sadness, the killing, the destruction that's going on in the world, the abuse of people who have no control over their lives.
Mhm.
So, if it were a matter of talking and sharing with our neighbors, I think there are a lot of us up to that.
Mhm.
But this feeling of, and we talked about this before we got on the call, that feeling that says, I'm right and you're wrong,
Exactly.
is such a pervasive, controlling sentiment. I don't know how you get around that.
I think that one of the keys to me are, that I'm a bit of a mystic, and I love mystical philosophers. And there have been mystical philosophers who ask, in a world created by a holy good God, which is their belief system, where does evil come from? It's a conundrum. And the answer they come up with is evil is when God's attribute of justice is disconnected from God's attribute of compassion.
Hmm.
I'm right. That gives me the right to do anything. Nobody wakes up in the morning, and I really believe this. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to do something evil today, unless maybe they have, some problem or something that makes them like evil. They wake up saying, I'm right. The people who ran the concentration camps woke up every morning saying, I'm right, and that gives me the right to do this. The people who ran the slave plantations woke up every morning and did the same thing. The people who are running, sites for that make degrading porn are waking up every morning. Believe it or not, I believe it. They wake up every morning thinking, well, this is just how it is in the world. You make a living this way, and I have the right to do it. They are all totally lacking uncertainty. And before we help other people in the world be a little bit more uncertain about their rightness, we've got to be a little bit uncertain about our rightness. And that's where I think the disconnect is. People are trying to do great things in the world, trying to make it a better place, trying to make it, a place where justice and compassion live together under the same roof. But more and more, I feel that they're coming at it from the point of view of, I'm right and you're wrong. Therefore, whatever I do to you is okay.
Yeah, well, we're trying to have this conversation and stay out of the political realm. So I'm going to stay with that idea because um, as recently I've heard a conversation justifying the horror in Gaza. I understand what happened October 7th, but there's no justification. I don't care what people are saying for killing children. There's none.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it seems that we are up against um, forces that give out misinformation on a regular basis, putting us at each other's throats. I'm sure someone listening to me will think, well, how can I say something in concern about Gaza that must make me anti-Semitic, which I am clearly not.
Mhm.
So, and that's just one part of the argument. I realize that there are other arguments on the other side, But there are some things that are hard and true for me, which is that we don't kill children. We shouldn't kill people who are civilians or truly innocent. And that's not just Gaza. As a general, the Geneva Convention seems to be important. We shouldn't be putting people in prison without the right to defend themselves, without the right for due process. So, I'm listening to you saying that I ought to have my perspective in that place called uncertainty. In martial arts, and I like the study of martial arts, although I've lost all my skills from the early days. But one of the things that I was fascinated by is something called cat stance. Cat stance. And in
Hmm.
cat stance, when you're in a combat with someone, you don't commit your body to 100% forward. You keep some of your weight on your back leg so that you can change your position easily. And that is a very protective, defensive practice. So, in speaking about events, I like this idea of not going whole hog that I'm right.
Hmm.
But again, water is wet, there is gravity, the sun shines, there's nighttime. There are some things which are facts. Little children are not dangerous. Why should they die? Okay, so I'm asking you on a broad conversation point, aren't there some things which are absolutely true that should not be violated?
There are things that are facts, but we often turn our back on them in order to achieve what we think is the right thing. I understand exactly how you feel, Phyllis,
Hmm.
but the whole situation there is a perfect example of what I've been speaking about. There were people there who said, well, anything we do now is justifiable. Then there were people on the other side, and I'm sorry, there are sides here, on the other side, who refused to acknowledge the facts that little children were killed in the October 7th attack. Oh no, that didn't happen. Oh, rape didn't happen. If we keep believing just what we want to believe, instead of holding each other in sorrow that little children are dying in both camps, then we'll never get to the point where we have the compassion for the little children.
Now we have an agreement there. But again, I like having this conversation, but the elephant in the room for me is that I think who is controlling the narrative is the question. I
Hmm.
don't think it's just a matter of the wisdom of uncertainty. I think the question now is that there is a narrative and there is a control of the flow of information. And the controls of that flow of information are very specific, very, very narrow, and getting narrower as we go each day.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I have neighbors that I love, and um, but some of them are what we would call on the other side of this issue, on the other side of it. It's not that they aren't open to conversation,
Hmm.
but everything that's coming into their heads is from one perspective only.
And that's usually because they also talk to other people who everything is coming from one perspective into their head and in many different ways. What I think we're missing as a society is that because of the orthodoxy that's being imposed on all points of views, is a good, healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
You know, I I wrote a little article which I never published because I don't tend to publish, right? Which I believe I sent to you. It's why I don't believe in science, but have a lot of faith in it. And that, was that title was inspired by the Alan Watts quote here. People were telling us if people were skeptical of the science, then they're terrible people. Well, you know what? Human beings were coming out with that science. I'm going to be willing to be skeptical of any human being I come across. And the very glory, the very nature of science itself is skepticism. The scientific method is all about skepticism. Ask any good scientist what science has ever proven is right, and they will tell you nothing. We've just tested it, and all we can say at this point is it's never been proven wrong so far. That's the most we can say because it's based on skepticism. We don't know if we're missing something or if there was a variable that we didn't take into account. And yet, skepticism, now I didn't agree with the people who were skeptics. I took my COVID shots, I wore my mask, I stayed indoor for a goodly amount of time, but I did not hate the people who were skeptical about it. So if we can respect other people's skepticism, it protects our own skepticism. And then maybe we can get past these narrow channels that you described so perfectly of information coming into people.
Well, I come away with some optimism after listening to you. And I know that I'm about to ask you an unfair question because we like to dance in the philosophical zone.
Sure,
But I know you have a long history as a project manager
sure.
and an expertise in making things happen. So give me a classic example, either in school or in business or in community. What would an application of your idea look like?
I worked for a major Fortune 500, now Fortune 500, probably Fortune 50 company,
Mhm.
who I don't want to name
Right.
because I'm too old to go through a lawsuit. So, and I was in a company that was bought up by that company. When you go into meetings and you're trying to get to know each other, the first thing the people from the other company asked is, all right, so how long have you been with this company? Not how long is your experience? What did you learn in other companies? Because their way was the right way. They wanted to know how long have you been indoctrinated into the right way so I know whether to respect you or not. And that was their belief. They were always right about everything. That company was had a market cap that I don't even want to mention because then it'll give away the company. And now their worth is almost nothing because they did not open themselves to different points of view or the value of anything except their way. Now, when two dogs fight, they can sometimes really get into a terrible, terrible fight, and they're injuring each other. And the only thing that stops the fight is when one dog gets on its back and exposes their jugular to the other dog. It's a way of saying, okay, I trust you. You're not going to rip out my throat. Let's get back to this level of trust and let's go play together. And then they go off and play together. We have to be vulnerable to the possibility, not the certainty or anything like that, the possibility that the other person may have information that can help us or a point of view that can help us. It starts with us. I can't give you a program to make this happen. I can only say it all starts with us. There was a great movie that I really loved called um, They Might Be Giants. And it was with George C. Scott, who played a very, very important judge who suddenly believes he's Sherlock Holmes. And so his brother is trying to have him committed, and they assign his case to a psychiatrist played by the wonderful Joanne Woodward. Unfortunately, her name is Jane Watson. So she's officially Dr. Watson, which just feeds into what his beliefs are. Once they're arguing in a cab, and she accuses him. She says, "You're just like Don Quixote. You're always tilting at windmills." And the George C. Scott character says, "I am nothing like Don Quixote. He was crazy." And she says, "Well, yeah, you are too." He said, "No." He said, "There's a major difference. Don Quixote thought that windmills were giants. There's a big difference between thinking they are giants and that they might be giants. And I tilted things because I think they might be giants. What might be, it is the glory of the human race. Penicillin, bread mold might be penicillin, might be a cure for a disease. This might be that. That says that's all that separates us from, being, from being a creature that can't do anything. So we need to have the smallest bit of doubt that there might be value there. When I was 60, I turned 60. The day I turned 60, I made a list of the 10 most important things that I had learned during those 60 years. Number one on the list was that I had learned more from people who disagreed with me than people who agreed with me. People who agreed with me were useless. I already knew that stuff already. But the people I disagreed with gave me the possibility of a different point of view. So it starts with us. Are we willing to let go of the hatred and the animosity and above all the certainty? Or will we welcome others into our lives to discuss what's happening?
Thank you, Lable Braun. You do not disappoint. You've given me something new to think about and a new place to exist in. The wisdom of not knowing everything.